Hello everyone and welcome to another edition of What's on My Desk, and today I have something super exciting. I have what I deem to be the best made, the most innovative watch or brand pound for pound, which is this Greubel Forsey, and it was the very first invention that they made. We're also going to get into a cool tourbillon that made a lot of waves back in the day when bigger was better, which is the Vegas tourbillon, and of course master high-end horology from Gerard-Perregaux, which is something you don't often hear, but it's a watch that's completely overlooked and a ridiculous value for the money today. So let's jump into it. And I'm going to start with the Gerard-Perregaux. This is from the Opera series, and this is the Opera Two. You want to talk about a real flex horologically? This is it, right? Because this is the movement. Gerard-Perregaux reminded the entire industry who they actually are, or how big their you-know-what is, right? Everybody knows Gerard-Perregaux for the three bridges. It's iconic, it's historic, it's part of the brand's DNA, right? But what is the Opera series? Well, this is Gerard-Perregaux stepping into the ring of grand complication and saying very clearly, hey, we can do it all and we can do it well. So back in the late 90s and early 2000s, they released the Opera trilogy. Obviously, Opera 1 came first. It was a Westminster Carillon minute repeater with a tourbillon. Already serious, 4 gongs, not a simple repeater. Opera 3 went completely left field, essentially a music box on the wrist playing Mozart, pure artistry. But the Opera 2, in my mind, I think was the sweet spot. This was the apex of the trilogy as far as I'm concerned. Inside you have tourbillon, a perpetual calendar, and then of course the minute repeater. Now, it's not a basic chime. This is a 4-gong Westminster as well. It plays a melody, it's layered, it's complex, it's engineered. As far as I'm concerned, minute repeaters sit along the top of watchmaking. If anybody ever says, hey Roman, break down complications, starting from time-only watches, I would put the minute repeater complication at the very top, especially when you talk about a Westminster. You take that, and then on top of that, you add a tourbillon. Now you're starting to flex technically. Add a perpetual calendar, and you're in the family of grand complication. Now, combining all three and actually pulling it off, that is a massive statement. We're talking 500 hours of hand finishing alone. Put this thing under a loop, and I promise you, the hammers and the gongs are absolutely flawless. Now, this watch does stand up to Patek Philippe. It does stand up to Audemars Piguet, my favorite brand. It stands up to everybody and probably runs circles over most. And it's in platinum, which, platinum minute repeaters, they just sound different. The sound tends to be heavy, dense. To me, it's like pure class. And by the way, when this thing came out, there were very few brands that were pushing musical complication at this level. GP wasn't chasing trends. They were building mechanical instruments to the wrist. And for years, collectors respected Gerard-Perregaux, but they weren't exactly chasing them down. They were, I would say, an insider brand, but that's changing fast. The whole market is revaluing what Gerard-Perregaux brings to the table, and pieces like the Opera 1, 2, or 3 is exactly why. You're looking at a watch, first of all, that was done fully in-house. It's historically grounded, and it's mechanically insane, for the lack of a better word. This is not hype. This is real substance, right? I've been saying it for years. Gerard-Perregaux is here to stay. They've been around for a long time. They're not going anywhere. And when you see the market finally starting to reassess watches like this, that's probably your signal to get out there and actually have a look. Anyway, let's talk about the arts. Specifically, Vacheron Constantin the art set in yellow gold that I have in front of me. I have, yes, all 4 watches is one set. Now, I know everybody likes to talk about the Holy Trinity, but when it gets into the world of métier d'art, Vacheron Constantin isn't just a conversation. They pretty much are the conversation, right? Most brands treat art as a marketing gimmick. For Vacheron, it's in their DNA. We're talking about the oldest manufacturer in the world. Let's start there. Uninterrupted history since 1755. When I was in Geneva, they were celebrating 280-year anniversary. That's a flex. Look, continuity matters, right? Because you have a lot of brands out there that will say, oh, we're this old, but they're continuously this old, right? A lot of these brands were revived and they had a big pause in the middle somewhere, right? So the continuity matters because this isn't something you decide to do in 2020 because it sounds cool, right? It's about passing on, transmission of crafts, if you will, right? Passed down from generation to generation, refined over time, and ultimately preserved after so many years. And Vacheron has been decorating watches since the 18th century, long before social media or limited drops, if you will. And over time, it naturally evolved, right? It started with decorative pocket watches for the aristocrats, enamel portraits, engraved cases that were pure, I'd say, status pieces at the time. Then it became something a little bit more conceptual, storytelling on the dial, using cultural themes, historic narratives. Today's métier d'art is its own pillar of the brand, period, right? They have dedicated in-house artisans for enamel, engraving, stone setting. This isn't outsourced decorations. This is a true definition of an atelier, if you ask me. Let's talk about this set in particular, right? You have 4 watches, each measuring 40 millimeters. Each one is dedicated to a different explorer. So you have Columbus, Marco Polo, Magellan, and Zhang He. And if you look at the dials, these are not printed maps. These are hand-worked surface featuring Champlevé enamel, Grand Feu enamel, hand engraving, and miniature painting. They put all that stuff in there. At a glance, you can say, "Oh, this is cloisonné." It's not, right? And there's 2 enamel techniques here, which is Champlevé and Grand Feu, and I did a separate video on this. You guys can check it out. You also have engraving and you have miniature painting, right? So we're talking about multiple firings in a kiln that at extremely high temperatures. Again, I got to get into much detail of how this is made, right? I'll tell you this, one mistake, it cracks. The success rate on enamel dials is about 50%. That means 50% of the dials don't make it out of the shop. Then you're talking about the miniature paintings that are painted by hand, right? There's 3 different things. Often you'll find companies do an engraved dial. You'll find companies do a Grand Feu enamel or Champlevé enamel or cloisonné dial enamel, right? You'll find dials that are miniature paintings. And here's what I love in particular, because the mechanics were designed specifically to actually support the art that's on the watch. You don't have traditional hands cutting across the dial. Instead, you get wandering hours and retrograde minutes, reminiscent of our work, Audemars Piguet a bit, right? So the hours will travel across this arc while the minutes sweep and snap back. And what that does, it keeps the center open, so the artwork stays uninterrupted. Plenty of other brands do Métier d'Arts as well. Patek Philippe has rare handcrafts, museum level one-offs, right? Cartier has its Maison de Métier d'Arts, mastering techniques like cloisonné and among other things, right? Van Cleef & Arpels leads into poetry and animated scenes. And while Audemars Piguet has done decorative royal oaks, it's not their core identity like it is here. If you ask me to pick a brand, or one single brand that I had to go with when it comes to Métier d'Arts, very first choice is always going to be Vacheron. Now let's talk about what I dub to be, what I believe to be, and what I stand behind, the best made, pound for pound made watch, the best pound for pound finished watch, and the most innovative watch, and the most, I should say, innovative brand that exists. And I'm talking about Greubel Forsey. And I say I have the honor of having the very, very first watch that started it all for Greubel Forsey, the double tourbillon 30-degree vision. This isn't just their first invention, it's literally the blueprint for the entire brand. Most people think a tourbillon is just for show, but Greubel Forsey actually wanted to make it work better. The idea was simple. If gravity messes with your timing, don't just fight it, average it out. They nested one cage inside another. At a 30-degree angle, it's pure precision and 0 gimmicks. And the finishing, as I said, it's on another level. I've been to Greubel Forsey, I've seen it done. Every single bridge, the edges done by hand to standard that most brands can't even touch, right? They aren't chasing trends, they're just refusing to cut corners. I'm gonna finish off with Vegas, baby. This is the AP Royal Oak Las Vegas Strip Tourbillon Chronograph. Going back to good old times when I was starting the business, when everybody wanted 2 things. They wanted a humongous watch and they wanted a tourbillon. That's all. Anybody who was anybody that had a little bit of change, that was shopping in the higher end of things. The first question I asked is, what tourbillons do you have and how big are they, right? And the Francois did a lot of experimenting, right? And AP was experimenting heavy. During those times, these guys brought us things that, was taboo to the watch world, right? I feel like Vegas was the perfect place to do it, if you ask me. This is not a watch that was made for the global market. It was made for Vegas, right? More specifically, it was made with partnership with the jewelers, one of AP's key retail partners on the strip during a time when Audemars Piguet was deep into boutique-only and location-specific limited editions. Late 2000s, early 2010s, limited editions were hot. I'm talking about Montoya's, I'm talking about Baricello's, all the Arnold Schwarzenegger pieces, it's close to 20 of those, right? You had destination watches like Worth Avenue limited edition, actually made for a friend of mine, Bobby from ECJ Lux. Of course, you had Monte Napoleone for Italy and so on and so forth, right? Destination watches were a real thing. And blacked out PVD cases and forged carbon still felt aggressive and very, very, very new at the time. And the one I have here is from the top of the entire Las Vegas Strip lineup, right? This is a 45mm Royal Oak. The case is executed in stainless steel and it's PVD coated. This is a manual chronograph 1-minute tourbillon. It has the black mega tapisserie dial, red ivory numerals, red accents throughout. Nothing about this watch is subtle, and that's intentional. This thing didn't come with a standard box. You want to talk about Vegas? Pure Vegas presentation box. Custom poker chips, 2 decks of Audemars Piguet playing cards. It was literally a poker set. Again, you might say, oh, what's the big deal? Theme packaging. Well, back then, you didn't really have, the industry was conservative. You didn't have this type of theme packages back then. You had these beautiful, lacquered, nice wooden boxes. This is what you would normally get, not a set of poker chips with a dealer button and 2 decks of cards, if you will, right? This was a full concept watch because this was not a one watch release, right? The collection included multiple editions and it tied to the same theme, also locally, not globally distributed. The collection included the regular Royal Oak Offshore Vegas strip, which had literally the same DNA as this, minus the tourbillon. Still very bold, still unmistakably Las Vegas, right? But I would say more wearable day to day and obviously less expensive. Back then, those things retail right around 20 grand, right? And obviously it still had the Las Vegas engraving in the back, in the case back. And they didn't stop there. They released a white gold diamond set, men's offshore, same offshore DNA, but leaning to the bling or the luxury side of Vegas. They put it as a luxury side of Vegas. I'd say let's lean into the bling side of Vegas, right? And they also did a matching ladies Royal Oak Offshore Vegas strip and 37 millimeters ladies offshore, which is also set fully with diamonds and also limited to either 50 or 60 pieces. But tie these things together was really the intent. This is where these watches weren't meant to be subtle. They weren't meant to be mass produced. They were sold locally to collectors already playing at that level. I think this was AP's way to test just how far Royal Oak and Royal Oak offshores could go. Everybody wanted a limited edition offshore back then. In fact, I feel that part of my success in my career was the fact that I kind of specialized in these limited editions because I found a niche there before there was that, oh, let's sell something at 5x retail, right? So as I hold what I would say the top of that collection, right, or the very top of that collection, this is, to me, it's a snapshot in time that's near and dear to my heart as far as my career was concerned, me just starting out in this business. It's also when limited editions actually meant something. AP wasn't holding back. This is when the offshore and the Royal Oaks were pushed as far as they can go. So unlike Vegas, where what happens there stays there, I would love for you to actually share this video with those that you might think will enjoy this episode. Thank you guys for tuning in. Hit that like button, hit the subscribe button if you're not a subscriber, and I will see you on the next one.